Retail Week is brought to you by Nutrisphere N, Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager, protecting your nitrogen from all three forms of loss.
I am here with Dr. Imad Saab of CropLife America. He's visiting our offices this week as part of the judging process for the Environmental Respect Awards, which we'll get to in a minute. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. Great. Thanks so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. My name is Imad Saab. I'm the Senior Director for Environmental Policy at CropLife America. I've been in that role for about a year and 2 months. Before that, I spent 18 years in Des Moines, Iowa, working for Pioneer Highwood International, which eventually became part of DuPont. So DuPont pioneers have a long background in agricultural research and production and advocacy, and I do a different role now, but supporting similar registrants such as Pioneer and others in CropLife America.
Okay, what's going on in the regulatory community right now? What are you focusing your attentions on?
Well, in my space, I focus on environmental policy. So I work with our registrants to make sure that the innovations that our member companies produce are able to make their way to the growers and to serve agriculture as a whole in a predictable and a fast way, but also make sure that those products are subjected to a science-based regulatory framework. So we're doing all the right questions and experimentation to make sure that our products are as safe as they can be, that they're characterized accurately, and that the growers have the right information on the label to be able to use them effectively and as expeditiously as possible.
It looks like we are getting in a much more restrictive environment in terms of the regulatory issues that are facing this country. What do you think is driving all of that?
Yeah. We're seeing that as well, not only in the United States regulatory systems, but also abroad. We have seen a very clear trend towards more what we call hazard-based regulation as opposed to risk-based regulation. We all recognize we're dealing with hazardous chemicals to a large extent, but there's ways to manage that hazard so that you minimize and greatly reduce the risk to the people that are in contact with those chemicals and to the consumers. In the end, it goes back to the science. We strongly believe that using the best available science and data gets you to where we need to be as far as having a really superior risk-based regulatory system. And the EPA in the United States has a mandate to use science as the basis for determinations. And where we see them deviating from that mandate, we work with them to identify areas where we think the science can point them in a different direction. One example would be the models that they use for assessing water or drift from sprayers onto adjacent fields and so on, where they tend to be ultra-conservative and not really reflective of what happens in the real world. And we show them data and use the science that we have and that we can get from the literature to demonstrate to them a better way to do it to achieve a more predictable result. And in the end, what we want to do is make sure those products get to the growers as fast as possible so they can begin to reap the benefits of those chemicals, and as do we as consumers in the long term. But in the end, also we want to make sure these are as safe as possible and are used in the most appropriate way to minimize the footprint on the environment.
Over the 9+ years, they've done over 400 trials, side-by-side replicated trials, and we've shown that 90% of the time we've had a positive yield response with Nutrisphere. So 90% of the time a crop producer out of those 400+ trials could expect a positive response. That positive response is average 10 bushel an acre across all 400+ trials.
Let's talk a minute about your experiences here this week. You've been a judge serving to review some of the applications for the Environmental Respect Awards. What's that been like for you?
Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been an eye-opener. You know, I lived and worked in the Midwest in Iowa for 18 years, so I saw some of these operations from the other side. It was remarkable for me to see how much awareness there is of the environment, of the impact on the environment, and of the need to minimize the footprint of agriculture on the environment. We reviewed dozens of applications from the United States and Canada, pretty much every state, and it was really impressive to see the care that those facilities, the retailers, put into their operations and to make sure they're safe, they are secure, and educating the communities about what's going on there, and also educating the growers directly or indirectly onto how to use the products in a safe and effective way and how to mitigate the potential effects on the environment. So it's really an eye-opening experience, and it makes me feel good about the future that we have all those outlets so concerned about the environment and that we're doing the right thing.
And you can learn about who those people were, those companies that won, in some upcoming editions of both Agribusiness Global Magazine and our sister publication, CropLife. We'll be covering that extensively in some upcoming issues. Can't release the information here just yet. Dr. Saab, I'd like to thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you to this week's video sponsor, Nutrisphere N Fertilizer Manager from Verdesian Life Sciences.